You are listening to the Nightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Welcome to the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thank you so much for listening. Coming up, we will recap the Houston Cougars' run to the Final Four of the NCAA Men's Basketball Tournament. Sam Rassenfoss of the Scott Holman Pawdcast will be here to talk about that. He is standing by in the virtual green room and will join us in just a few moments. But first, we're going to lead with volleyball. After winning a third consecutive American Athletic Conference title, UCF officially punched its ticket into the 2021 NCAA Division I Women's Volleyball Championship. The Knights claimed one of 30 automatic bids available in the championship as a conference tournament or regular season champion during the championship selection show on ESPNU. The 16-1 Knights will face 16-0 High Point on April 14th at 3:30 in the NCAA first-round action in Omaha, Nebraska. The winner of the match will take on national number 7 seed Purdue in the second round of the tournament the following day. UCF earned its 11th all-time NCAA tournament berth after repeating as the winner of the American Volleyball Championship with a 3-1 victory over Temple in the conference title match on April 3rd. The Knights have now earned the automatic NCAA bid from the American for the third straight season, to go along with a regular season championship pre-conference tournament in 2018. UCF has previously advanced to the second round of the NCAA championships on 3 occasions in 1997, 2003, and again 2 years ago. Meanwhile, UCF's McKenna Melville became the second Knights player in program history to claim American Player of the Year accolades, while Temple's Felinica Danielson earned the distinction of being the conference's first freshman libero of the year. Houston's Annie Cook was the first setter of the year, win by a freshman in league history, and doubled as the freshman of the year. UCF's Todd Dagenaeus and Temple's Baker Ganesharatanam were named co-conference coaches of the year. The all-conference teams look like this, headed up by Melville from UCF, and Marie Watson, her teammate, joins her there. Bree Wood of East Carolina, Annie Cook from Houston, Cortland Henderson of Houston, along with fellow Cougar teammate Abby Jackson. South Florida's Marta Vitkovic is on the team, as well as a pair of players from Temple, Jim Grimshaw and Felinica Danielson. Pair of players from Tulane, Lexi Douglas and Kayla Dinkins, and Sophia Rowling of Wichita State rounded up the first team. Second team, Narissa Mirovic of UCF, Adria Oliver of Cincinnati, Maria Madeline of Cincinnati joins her as well, Tori Frederick and Rachel Tullis of Houston, Jaden Boss of SMU, Mireille Baluk-Bassi of Temple, and Maggie Embre of Tulsa round out the second team honors. And when we come back, we will talk to Sam Rassenfoss of the Scott and Holman Pawdcast and relive the Houston Cougars' trip to the Final Four. That's coming up as the AAC Report continues right after this.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Nightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com.
All right, my pleasure to welcome back to the show. We got Sam Rassenfoss from the Scott Holman Pawdcast as we look back at the great season for the Houston Cougars, capping it off with a Final Four appearance. The semifinal game notwithstanding, it was still a tremendous season. Sam, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Always great to be on, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
No question. I think last time you were on, I asked you, would anything short of an Elite Eight or Final Four be a disappointment? And you had remarked, no, it wouldn't be because, it's all about consistency and, getting to the dance and making a good run. But I'm sure everybody's elated that they took the journey they took.
Yeah, it's obviously it's very exciting. This fan base's first Final Four since 1984, and not to age anyone watching or listening, but I was not alive the last time this team made a run, and that could be said for a good chunk of our fan base. So obviously Houston has a great basketball history, but actually having a Final Four in the present time makes that history feel a little bit more alive. I mean, obviously the Phi Slamma Jamma years, Elvin Hayes in the game of the century, some great Cougar teams that kind of get lost in the shuffle in the 1970s between those. But, now obviously the program's been on a good trajectory for a while now, but, it makes that Phi Slamma Jamma, makes that era kind of feel a little bit more alive now that you have this, I guess, third era of Cougar basketball excellence that we're in right now. Obviously, any fan base is going to be really excited about the Final Four, but I think what makes it so exciting is kind of what you're talking about, the consistency that this program, I may not ever see us go to a Final Four again. I may see us go to one next year, but it's knowing that not only you had this great season, but it was a great season in the larger context of a program that's been doing quite well for a little while now.
And you look at the fact, Kelvin Sampson, when he took the job, believed that a Final Four was possible with this program. So it's kind of neat to see that come to fruition because, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to build it and make it happen.
Yeah, and a lot of things need to go your way. That's not to say I think the Cougars are lucky. I've seen more criticisms of U of H's run-in than I ever care to see in my lifetime, because I think it's kind of ridiculous to criticize any team's run in the NCAA tournament. You play who's in front of you, you get who you're going to play, but things need to break your way. Like, you could be a fantastic team, have a fantastic season, and just the circumstances such as they are, and your season ended in the Sweet 16. I mean, the Cougars a few years ago, but for a Jordan Poole circus shot at the end there, had a really nice, clean path to the Final Four that year. Do I think that team was as good as this one? No. I think on the balance, this team is the best team Sampson's had here, but do I think that Cougar team 3 or 4 years ago is capable of going to the Final Four? Absolutely. Sometimes it's who's in front of you. It's your draw. And yeah, just Kelvin Sampson believing in this because, 7 years ago, my co-host Dustin, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight, and we kind of talked about it. We were both obviously elated when Sampson's name came out there for this job and kind of remarked to ourselves, well, if Kelvin Sampson can't get this team consistently to this tournament, we have to start asking ourselves if anyone can ever get Houston Cougar basketball back there. And obviously he's done more than just make this team a perennial contender. This is a perennial contender that is a good bet to go into the second weekend and beyond. And you obviously couldn't be more excited about that.
Well, they had, Cleveland State, they opened around, got through that, but Dejan Giroux injures his hip early on. Now they could afford to cruise to that game without him. And then the Rutgers game, which ended up being a battle royale. They got down deep in that game. But Dejan Giroux, I want to hear your thoughts on that performance. I mean, just an amazing warrior mentality, how he willed his team to victory.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone in this fan base doubted his toughness. He's a guy who's had to play through injuries. He's a guy who's had a lot of personal loss in his life. A very tough guy, and I think you have had that from the fan base even before this happened. But to see this guy go from an injury that was so bad, I know the Cleveland State game was fairly decisive, but the fact that Dejan Dro wasn't healthy enough to go back out there is kind of like, oh no, like, is this guy going to be capable of doing it? The way Samson was talking about in the post game, it sounded pretty grim. It sounded like you were going to have to, figure out what you had other than the Dejan Dro point guard. And not just that he came back and played in that game, period, because just a hip pointer is such a painful and difficult injury to deal with, but that he came in there and played, period, and that he played at a high level, that he played at the level such that if Dejan Dro doesn't give you what Dejan Dro gives you in that game against Rutgers, I think we're talking about a Houston season that ended in the round of 32 against Rutgers. Because I was very much, as I watched that game, kind of making my piece is the wrong word, but kind of making my sports piece like, this might be it. Like, we're down 9 points here with about 4 or 5 minutes left. Teams don't usually come back from this. And, obviously the fact that I kept the game on, the fact that I still had even the faintest belief that this team could come back and win is a testament to the toughness of this group. But just doing what he did, offensively, and I think that's been the big difference is, Dejan Dro's always been a pretty good defender. If you're not at least a pretty good defender, pretty willing on defense, you're just not going to play under Kelvin Sampson. But what he's been able to give this team offensively this year, it's been one of the many differences between last year's team and this year's team, that Dejan Dro wasn't just a distributor, wasn't just a glue guy, that he was a guy who could get some offense for himself. And he gave you some offense when no one else was giving it. And I think the play of the game, it's two guys, Dro being one of them, but Dro getting to the basket against Rutgers, splitting a few defenders to get there, the ball coming just off the rim, and Tremont Mark coming from the three-point line to put it in. I don't want to say one play really defined or really flipped the Houston Cougar men's basketball run in this tournament, but that's it right there. It was Dejan Dro getting to the basket when, by all accounts, he probably should have gotten there, and Tremont Mark getting a putback that, by all accounts, that no one would reasonably expect him to get. And just the Cougars gutting out a game where they didn't have their best offensively, where their best guy was playing with a really painful injury, and only having a couple days to prepare for what I thought was a very underrated Rutgers team. It was, it kind of gave this team that, and I hate cliches like this, but the team of destiny vibes. You thought, wow, if this team could overcome this poor of a performance against this opponent who was kind of smelling blood, smelling their first, second weekend appearance since I think 1979 was the last time Rutgers has gotten past the round of 32. If we could do that, then hey, maybe just several days to prepare for Syracuse. Maybe we got a little deeper run in us, and obviously the results after that kind of bore themselves out.
Yeah, and it's often been said, during the course of making a long-running NCAA tournament, you usually have that one game where you're pushed to the limit that you have to, overcome some adversity and make something happen. And then the way the schedule worked out as well, with because of the COVID protocols and everything they've put in place, there was a little extra time for Giroux to get ready for the Syracuse game,
yep,
which ended up being a big benefit, and certainly not to take away from the other Cougars on the team. But when I saw him lined up against Buddy Boeheim, I knew Buddy Bucket's run was done.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think that's why I think both of us, my co-host and I, went into the Syracuse game not overconfident because and the younger Boeheim was shooting at a clip that very, very few players, I think no one ever has shot it at that clip in the tournament, and just gotten through two really good teams in San Diego State and West Virginia. But Giroux with several days of rest, Kelvin Sampson with several days to prepare for the zone, several days to prepare for a really good perimeter shooting team in Syracuse. I thought I was more confident about that than Rutgers. Giroux getting extra time to rest. We actually thought it was pretty cool that we got the absolute last game on Saturday night, because just any second that Dejan Giroux had to rest, any second that this team had additionally to prepare for Syracuse was welcome. And I think if you ask the Cougars to play Syracuse on 2 or 3 days rest, let's just say that's how things broke out, I'm not sure it'd be the same result. I think the Cougars could have beaten the Orange with a couple days preparation, but I think it would have looked a lot more like the Oregon State game in the next round. I think it would have been a little bit more difficult. I think you would have seen the Cougars, not that they had a great offensive game against the Orange, but you saw at times the effects of preparation. You saw they had guys in the middle ready to kind of deal with the zone and get in the soft spots and deal with all the unique challenges of facing Syracuse. And just coming off that performance against Rutgers, where maybe it wasn't the Cougars' best defensive effort, that, Giroux and the guard group as a whole. I want to give Marcus Sasser and Quentin Grimes a shout out there too, because I thought Marcus Sasser and Quentin Grimes both had good tournaments on the defensive end and offensive end as well. But what he did to the younger Beja, it was very enjoyable from a Cougar fan perspective, and I think demonstrates why he was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year, why I think Dejan Giroux's defense is going to at least get him some NBA interest. I'm not going to say he's going to be on an NBA roster this time next year necessarily, but I think he's going to be in someone's camp, and that tournament performance and the tournament performance, I think writ large is the biggest reason. And just Dejan Giroux working himself being, from I think he could play in Europe or somewhere professionally guy to a guy, I think is going to get an NBA look in some form or fashion. I think it's just a testament to what he did this year and certainly what he did in the tournament.
Yeah, and like you pointed out, too, they were very masterful at getting into the middle of that zone, which a lot of teams do not fare well doing that. But they had a great game plan for that. And then I thought, and just like we've seen in the American all year, the fact that they killed the offensive boards really just took Syracuse's heart away.
Yeah, I think Syracuse came into that game at 340th or something in opponent offensive rebound percentage. As soon as I saw it stat, I got a lot more confident. I thought, okay, if the Cougars get 18, 19 second chances at a bucket, even against that difficult zone, and the Cougars this year at times had struggled against zone. I mean, you saw ultimately what ended up being this team's loss when Baylor kind of threw a zone at them and Oregon State threw a zone at them at times. They just didn't really have an answer for it. But I thought if you get enough second chances against it, like they were able to against Syracuse, I think that's just this team's mentality that they're not going to be a great first shot team. I think Kelvin Sampson said it when he was talking in the Final Four. He's like, I bet Gonzaga doesn't have to work very much on offensive rebounding because they're a first shot team. Baylor's a first shot team, although I think Baylor being excellent at offensive rebounding is a big reason why they were the team standing at the end there. And that's just such a part of this program's identity that even when this isn't going to be a group of guys that are great pure shooters, you're going to get so many second chances that it almost doesn't matter. And it's been very fun to watch this team become just so excellent at this thing that I think to some degree is kind of a lost art now.
Yeah, and of course after they got to Syracuse, it was on to the Elite Eight, and Oregon State was making a Cinderella run. So they had to face a team that had some magic working in their favor to get to the point where they got to. But ultimately they got it done, and as you said, got to their first Final Four since 1984 in the Phi Slamma Jamma days. That had, not that you don't want the Final Four to be your ultimate accomplishment, winning that game, was certainly a big jolt for the Cougar program.
Yeah, and you don't want to say that you're happy to be there, but I mean, I would like to think all four programs that got to this year's Final Four were happy to be there. I think every single one of them to a man would have wanted to win, but I mean, just being able to hang that Final Four banner regardless of who you are, it's a great thing for your program, and not something I was exactly sure I would ever see, even as high as I was on Cougar basketball. That it was kind of funny. The Oregon State game, it was very much a game of two halves. I mean, the Cougars just dominated out of the gates. I think Oregon State in that second half showed why they ran through a lot of really good teams to get here. I mean, that's a team that had been playing win-or-go-home basketball for 2 or 3 weeks, whereas, the Cougars pretty much had themselves safely in the field sometime in January. So, you talk about teams who thrive on this kind of situation. That was Oregon State, and Oregon State came really, really close to getting to that Final Four. And I think when I went into that Baylor game on Saturday, obviously knew the Bears were a really good team, one of the best offensive teams in the sport recently, just a prodigiously good three-point shooting team, a team that could score in so many different ways. I mean, I can't think of very many teams in my lifetime that could run on an 8-man rotation of guys, and all 8 of those guys could play all 5 positions to some degree, could guard, you could switch everything, and you kind of knew, as much as it was a high after the Oregon State game, I was like, okay, you can't, if you're in this tournament, you're going to eventually run into a juggernaut. You're going to eventually run into a team that's been one of the best 2 or 3 and it has been generationally good at something. And the Cougars did that, unfortunately, and we knew it would need a perfect effort, and you certainly didn't get it on the Cougar end, and you got it on the Baylor end. I mean, I think my favorite / least favorite stat, I think it just demonstrates how unbelievable Baylor was against the Cougars. They missed a total of 12 shots in the first half on Saturday. Pretty good on its own. That they got 7 offensive rebounds off those 12 missed shots. I mean, you were never going to beat Baylor when that happens. You're probably not going to beat them if they're only missing 12 shots. You're certainly not going to do that if they're also grabbing offensive boards. I mean, it's almost unfair to be as gifted as Baylor was/is, and to also be a top 10 offensive rebounding team like they were. It was a demonstration of just that Baylor had been just this unstoppable force pretty much the entire season, except for maybe a handful of games after they came off their COVID pause. I think as much as it kind of almost brings me physical pain to say nice things about Baylor, after that first half, I wasn't so much angry as I feel like I just watched the Cougars play, one of the greatest teams of my lifetime, and kind of the result you expect there when you're not, when you're not playing your best against one of the greatest teams of the last couple decades.
Yeah, and I think the thing we saw about Baylor, not only in the Houston game, but in the victory over Gonzaga, and you mentioned, their 8-man rotation, and the fact that so many of their guys can create their own shots, to have that many dudes be able to do that is pretty special.
Yeah, I thought it was really impressive, too, how they put that roster together, because they have some good recruits in there. Davion Mitchell and Mark Vidal were both good recruits out of high school, but no cream of the crop blue chip guys, no one and done guys on that roster. And also guys like Flagler and Maceo Teague who played at lower caliber mid majors, guys who like guys. I think Teague played, I want to say it was UNC Wilmington, and Flagler played at Presbyterian. Not exactly hoop powers right now, and yet Scott Drew and his staff were able to identify those guys as good fits and guys capable of playing, for a very good Big 12 team. And, add that to, Mark Vidal, who, again, as much as I hate complimenting Baylor in any form or fashion, just complimenting any other Texas college's players, Mark Vidal, the most Charles Barkley-esque player, I would argue, since Charles himself. I mean, not exactly a whole lot of 6'5", 250-pound power forwards gracing college basketball currently. And I think that's kind of what made them so fun, is that they could score in so many different ways. And when we previewed them, we spent a lot of time talking about Baylor offensively because they were this really good offensive team. And it was easy to forget, this was a top 30 defensive team. This was a team that, played a lot of really good offenses, both in the regular season and in the postseason. And just, this is a really good team defensively too. And I think that kind of got lost in the shuffle of them being really good offensively. And they certainly demonstrated that. What they did to Houston, and obviously what they did to what was supposedly, one of the greatest offensive teams of the last 20 or 30 years in Gonzaga, in a game that really wasn't ever particularly close.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought that they could have opened that same can on Gonzaga, and yet they did, and yeah, it was a they gave them a big punch early, and Gonzaga probably had some fatigue from the UCLA game, where they finally got pressed, but I don't think they would make excuses to that effect as well. Kind of getting off the topic a little bit, what do you think about people who criticize Mark Few, for coming up short, of the undefeated season? When you look at the fact, how many teams would say, okay, I can be in the NCAA tournament for 22 years in a row and go to a couple Final Fours? How many schools would sign up for that?
Exactly. I mean, obviously everyone on the Gonzaga, team and coaching staff, everyone in their fan base would love for, one of these trips to have ended in them, being the last team standing. But I mean, I think any criticism is as laughable as the fact that you probably know this a little better than me, that Mike Krzyzewski at one time, and I'm not Mike Krzyzewski's biggest fan, but I can acknowledge he's one of the greatest coaches. Mike Krzyzewski at one point in his career had people saying, well, this guy couldn't win the big one. That's kind of, I feel like you get that rep as not winning the big one until you do. And this Gonzaga team was really, really good. I'm not a big fan of, after the fact, well, maybe they weren't that good all along. No, they were a really, really good basketball team. Any metric, I think, your eyes or the numbers would tell you that was a really, really good basketball team. They just ran into another really, really good basketball team and lost them the championship. I think, I think what you were saying with the, emotional effort and the physical effort of putting away a really surprising and really good UCLA team certainly played some part in it. But, I think I think just about any team out there would trade their last, 20-something years for Gonzaga's last 20-something years. And I think that answers the question of whether or not Mark Few deserves criticism, because they've been a consistently excellent team and they're recruiting at a higher level than they were. They are progressing. They've gone from getting the most out of overvalued overseas players and West Coast guys to, getting someone like Jalen Suggs, who had offers from just about everyone for basketball and had a bunch of offers for football too. And, and that they're in for Chet Holmgren, the current, I think, number one player in the class of 2021. Like, Gonzaga is clearly, doing the same Gonzaga things from the last couple decades that made them successful, but they're also now getting, looks from the cream of the crop guys, that they're going to be able to now tell recruits, hey, we didn't win that big one, but Jalen Suggs came in here as a good, but not like Jalen Suggs wasn't Zion Williamson. Jalen Suggs didn't come to the college game preordained as a top 5 draft pick. He turned himself into one playing for Gonzaga this year. And I think that's only going to help them going forward, that they can advertise, what this team did to prospective players. They can say, hey, you're not going to come here and get lost to shovel. You can come here and maximize your talent and, leave here and get paid quite handsomely to play pro basketball.
Yeah, and then you look at what is happening in Houston. They're building a consistent program that is tournament bound on a year-to-year basis. And now that we've done with this year, the Final Four appearance, and I hate to be I don't like to do the hot take thing. Okay, who's our Final Four for 2022. That aside, what does the future look like for the Cougars moving beyond this season?
Yeah, I think the big question that has to be answered, and I think we know the answer to it, but it hasn't at least been officially answered, is will Quinton Grimes come back? I mean, he's not going to be a lottery pick, but I think Quinton Grimes is a pretty safe bet probably to get drafted in the first half of the second round. And the question now is, does Quinton Grimes see that and think, okay, this is probably going to be this is probably where I'm going to get picked. This is not something I could probably improve upon as another year of college. And he was also, I think, worth noting, U of H's first All-American since a guy named Hakeem Olajuwon. So had quite a good season here. And I think he knows this. No small part of that was having a creator and just incredible guard like Dejan Jarreau, who will not be back next year just because this is the end of the line for him collegiately. And I think that's going to enter into decision. I would be very pleasantly surprised if Quinton Grimes is back. But I think even if he's not back, I like Tremont Mark, the guy obviously most prominent for hitting just an absurd half-court bank shot against Memphis. And I think a promising, if somewhat inconsistent freshman contributor, but the best high school recruit from high school Sampson's brought in since he's gotten here, someone who Sampson constantly raves about. He talks about how many times that Quinton Grimes and Dejan Jarreau had to run at practice because they couldn't stay in front of Tremont Mark. I think it hasn't come all together in the games yet, but I think by year 2, you're going to see a different Tremont Mark. Is it a Tremont Mark who's an All-American? I don't know. I wouldn't go that far yet, but I think it's a guy who's ready to be a starting guard on this team. I think Sampson, a guy who's notably measured as recently as January and February, was saying publicly, he's like, I'm not sure this is a Final Four team, about the current group, is very bullish, unusually bullish about the long-term trajectory of this program. Josh Carlton, a UConn grad transfer who just committed to the Cougs, actually talked about Sampson's pitch to him largely being, hey, I really like this team we have. I really think this team is capable of making a big run. I think you, Josh Carlton in this case, are kind of the missing piece at the 5 spot. So, Sampson really likes Tremont Mark, Marcus Sasser coming back. He might know something we don't about Quinton Grimes, but if I was a betting man, Quinton Grimes will be playing somewhere professionally next year. This will be his last year here. I'm excited about Marcus Sasser. He was probably third of the 3 starting guards in terms of consistency and production, but he made a big jump from his freshman year to his sophomore year. And I think if he makes a similar jump from his sophomore to his junior year, we're talking about a guy who's going to be in the mix for AAC player of the season.
Yeah, and kept you guys alive in that first half.
He did. He represented 6 of the 7 made shots we had in the first half against Baylor. As a funny aside, if you had told me Marcus Sasser was going to go 6 for 11, I thought, okay, we might be in business here. And would have neglected to tell me that we would make one shot other than him. But a guy who is streaky, but definitely an improved player, a guy who I think has the potential to be the best pure shooter in the AAC, if he takes another step forward. And I like the addition of Carlton. Reggie Chaney, a guy we got from Arkansas, I think was a very underrated player. And Fabian White, I think one of the coolest stories from this Houston Cougar team, a guy who last May tore his ACL, and we were all kind of, wrote it off as, okay, well, we'll have Fabian back for 2021. And, he could be, a redshirt 50-year senior. Fabian was already traveling with the team in January in anticipation of coming back and ended up being a bench guy this season. And obviously the conditioning wasn't all there. He still has some rehabbing to do on his knee, but he was showing things in flashes off the bench that we hadn't seen from Fabian White the 3 years prior. And I think a little more rehab, getting his conditioning right for next year, I think we might be talking about Houston's best big man since Sampson has been here. A guy who always flashed potential, is always going to be a good offensive rebounder, but he showed a lot more skill and confidence than we've seen from Fabian White. And showing confidence coming off a torn ACL, even as much as modern medicine has made a torn ACL a lot more of a easy cut dry rehab than it was 15, 20, 30 years ago. That's an injury that most guys don't do athletics less than 12 months after having it happen to them. So I think that's something really exciting. Jamal Shed, I think he reminds me a lot of Galen Robinson, a guy who was incredibly important to the first several years of getting this program started, and really became the face of Houston Cougar basketball prior to this team. And I think he's been real promising, only kind of played in spurts last year, really didn't look as ready for the college game as a lot of guys on this roster, but a guy who I think with some development and with some patience, could be a really good kind of throwback pass first point guard. So, I think my expectations for the Cougar team next year, it's kind of like last season. I think it's going to be a good team. I think Kelvin Sampson has set a baseline here that you can reliably expect this Cougar team to be in the dance. I don't know if I had the same expectations as this year's team. I'd love to be pleasantly surprised, but, I think, losing Dejan Giroux, probably losing Quentin Grimes, I think you can't just write those off as easily replaceable guys, because those are two of the better players to come through this program in the last 20 years. I think it would be a disservice to them to say that they could be easily replaced.
Yeah. So what do you think the Final Four run by Houston means to the American?
I mean, I think everyone likes the win shares. As much as I would like to be the next AAC team in the Final Four again, I certainly wouldn't be too upset if let's say anyone but SMU or Memphis. I have specific feelings about SMU. let's just say UCF catches fire and makes a Final Four run, and we go out in the round of 32 or Sweet 16. I'm going to be happy to get those win shares. I'm going to be rooting for UCF or insert name of the non-Memphis SMU team in the tournament. But, I would like to think that it would, make people realize that this wasn't the best AAC season. I'm not going to try to sell the American as an elite basketball conference this year, but I think it was a conference that in terms of how teams play, I think really set you well up for March. I think, and again, as much as it pains me to give Memphis any kind of credit, I think if somehow Memphis got into the field this year, I don't think that would have been a one-and-done team. I think that was a flawed Memphis team, but I thought it was a team that did certain things well enough and certain things that could help you in the tournament when maybe your shot's not falling. I think being a good defense and rebounding team, which I think Houston was, I think Memphis was, I think the AAC on the average was a lot better at those two categories. I think playing that style of ball and playing most weeks, most nights, a team that's going to challenge you on the defensive end, a team that's going to challenge you on the boards the way that I think a lot of the teams in the American, even the non-NCAA teams did, I thought was very valuable. And I think that even in a year like this one where it wasn't the strongest year top to bottom for the league, it's worth noting that, the worst teams in the league this year were still around the top 140 or top 150 in KenPom. And I can not go back that far to when the worst teams in this league were, flirting, with like 300th or so, when ECU and Tulane were among the very, very worst teams in the country. Whereas now, ECU and Tulane, I don't think are where those fan bases would like it to be. I'm sure ECU and Tulane fans would like to be a whole lot better than, 10th or 11th in the AAC. But that's going to be a whole lot more challenging of a game. I mean, look at the ECU game that Houston played. I mean, I'll never understand that as long as I live, but the only team until Baylor to shoot the Cougars out of the gym were the ECU Pirates. And I think that's one extreme example, but I think it's an example of that even the bottom tier of the AAC has gotten better, and that the AAC, I think, just generally plays a specific kind of ball that sets you up well for the tournament. I think it's not a coincidence that Houston went to the Final Four and Memphis won the NIT. In tournament settings, defense and rebounding, and the ability to do that consistently, are so valuable. And I think that's a product of AAC basketball generally being a defense and rebounding kind of league.
Yeah, I always find it interesting because I do agree with you that it was not the best season the AAC has had in recent years. But I always look at the fact that, when the AAC cannibalizes itself, it's a poor league. When the Big Ten does it, it's a great league.
Exactly, yeah.
And we saw what happened to the Big Ten in the tournament this year.
Yeah, exactly. You can't, whatever the narrative is, it's going to perpetuate itself. The AAC's a one or two bid league. It's like when Wichita State lost to Drake, on a very, very, very close, in a very close game. Oh, it was a reflection of the AAC, but when Houston goes to the Final Four, it does. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So still those things, those barriers and walls we have to break down. But
yep.
That's what helps give us good content for our shows too. So there you go. All right, it's Rassenfoss of the Scott Holman Pawdcast. Please, as always, do those shameless plugs for everything you guys got going on.
Yeah, we are on every podcast platform out there: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, you name it. We're there. The Scott Holman Pawdcast, PAWD Cast. If you search us in any of those places, you can find us. We're always talking Cougs. If you want to get kind of an idea of how this team got from point A to point B in the Final Four season, you can listen to us. We were talking it every week, multiple times a week during the tournament, sometimes multiple times a week. During the season, we are on Twitter. We're most active at SHPAWDcast. We are on Facebook and a little bit less active, but still there. If you search the Scott Holman Podcast there, if you subscribe to us, I guarantee you will find just an unbelievable breadth of Houston Cougar content. You talk about quality and quantity. I would like to say we have the quality, but I think undebatably we also have the quantity. So find us in any of those places. Give us a listen there. We're always talking Cougars, talking AAC generally. Once I think the transfer portal kind of settles down and we have a better idea of who's on what team, I think it's going to be pretty interesting to talk about what the AAC looks like next year, because I think obviously a lot TBD there, but a lot there. We're going to be 52 weeks a year. We have a lot of off-season content coming too. So yeah, really, really excited for that. Obviously still wish we had a basketball team that was a champion to talk about, but it was a great run and a lot of content there.
Yes, and I will say too, when you live tweet during games, you do let the raw emotion come out.
I would say it's 90% Dustin, mainly because I think he could keep it more in check than me. I think I try to stay off my phone. I think it is to our podcast and general social media presence is a benefit that I do. But yeah, if you want the live, unfiltered Cougar feelings at game time, our Twitter feed, good place for it, as you said.
It's a beautiful thing, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Sam, thanks again for being on. Appreciate it.
Always great to be with you, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me.
And when we come back after a quick break, we will go through Player of the Week honors through a variety of sports, news and notes from the AAC, as we continue with the AAC Report only on the Nightline Sports Network right after this.
If you haven't figured it out yet, I love Tijuana Flats. I would love them even if they weren't a partner with us on the Nightline Sports Network. They have all kinds of great Tex-Mex food, and it's fresh, by the way. Made to order burritos, tacos, enchiladas, chimichangas, quesadillas, bowls, nachos, and taco salads. And if you haven't tried the queso, you are completely missing out. It is the best queso that I've ever had in my life. Absolutely hands down. And the sauce bar that they have, Everything from wild to mild in there. Absolutely awesome, awesome stuff. Not only do I love the food at Tijuana Flats, but I love the company, a UCF-born company, and they give back to the community with the Justin Queso Foundation. So head to your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fagley reminding you to tune in every Tuesday night, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app for Nightline at Night. Brought to you by Chad Bar Law. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Nightline at Night, every Tuesday, 9 to 10 p.m. on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, plus the WDBO app. Go Knights and charge on.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Nightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this.
We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys?
My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong, spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Nightline Sports Network.
Welcome back to the AAC Report on the Nightline Sports Network. Time now to check out Player of the Week honors. First in baseball, Alec Makarowicz, of East Carolina, is the Player of the Week. He led the Pirates to a 5-0 week, hitting .429 with 6 runs, a double, 2 home runs, and 7 RBIs. The Pitcher of the Week is teammate Gavin Williams. He repeated his Pitcher of the Week after striking out 13 for the Pirates in a 7-0 shutout of Cincinnati last week. Softball, the Player of the Week is Sidney McKinney of Wichita State. Grabbed those honor for the second straight week after a hot weekend in which she batted a conference high 7-14 in a 4-game sweep at Memphis. Added a home run, 4 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, and 6 runs in that effort. The Pitcher of the Week, once again, is Georgina Korick. And that's the 4th time this season. She got that honor for blanking Houston in 3 appearances during a 3-1 weekend for the South Florida Bulls. Surrendered just 6 hits over 15 full innings. Women's soccer, the Offensive Player of the Week, Sydney Nasello of South Florida scored the game-winning goal and added an assist in their win over number 14 Memphis that clinched the number 1 seed for the AAC Women's Soccer Championship. The Defensive Player of the Week, Cheyenne Dennis, her teammate, anchoring that defense in that 2-1 victory and added an assist. The Goalkeeper of the Week, Maeve English of East Carolina, 6 saves, including a big diving save on a penalty kick in their 4-0 win over Tulsa. And the Rookie of the Week, Michaela Gracia of Houston, made 4 saves and a clean sheet in their 3-0 win over Temple. Men's soccer, the Offensive Players of the Week, Sean Karani of Temple scored 2 goals as Temple got a big upset win over Tulsa. Emmanuel Santos is also a co-player of the week. He scored twice, including the match winner in double overtime to complete a 2-1 comeback from Memphis at South Florida last week. The Defensive Player of the Week, Giannis Learman of UCF. He in the back line weathered an early SMU goal and held form in a 2-1 win for the Knights last week. And the Goalkeeper of the Week is Ilan Goronsky of Temple. He was turned away 4 shot attempts in a 4-1 victory over Tulsa. The Rookie of the Week, Nigel Griffith of Temple, he contributed to 3 of their 4 goals in that victory as well. The American Athletic Conference Men's Tennis Summit League is Gabriel DeCamps once again, 2-1 in singles play, including defeating 2 top 30 individuals, 3-0 in doubles, as he led the night's 3 wins against ranked teams last week. The AAC Women's Tennis Player of the Week, Claudia Bartolome of SMU, went 2-0 in singles play and 2-0 in doubles, as number 48 SMU got wins against number 50 TCU and number 49 Tulsa last week. The Men's Golf Player of the Week is Johnny Travali. He led the UCF lineup to a 6th-place tie in a field featuring 8 top 40 teams at the Augusta Haskins Award Invitational April 3rd and 4th at the Forest Hills Golf Club in Augusta, Georgia. He shared 6th place individually with scores of 69, 69, and 71 for 209, 7 under par total, the best 14 opponents ranked in the latest GolfStat Top 100. University of Houston sophomore Karen Fredgart posted a 73 in the final round of the Augusta National Women's Amateur on Saturday afternoon last week to tie for 3rd in that prestigious amateur event at Augusta National. After starting her day with a bogey, she made 5 straight pars before alternating birdies and pars over the next 7 holes. Unfortunately, she had to battle through 2 bogeys and a double bogey on her final 5 holes to finish at 218. And in lacrosse, the AAC Attack Player of the Week, Brianna Harris of Florida. The midfielder of the week is her teammate Shannon Cavanaugh. The Defensive Player of the Week, Paige Gunning of Vanderbilt. And the Freshman of the Week is Danielle Pavanelli of Florida. The Men's Track Athlete of the Week, Aaron Benenfield. He had a runner-up showing in the 10,000-meter run at the Sound Running College Invite on April 2nd in Riverside, California. Crossed the finish line with a time of 28:10.95 for the top time in the American this season and the 5th fastest time in the nation as of April 7th. The Field Athlete of the Week, Michael Bryant of Wichita State. Standout showing in the hammer throw during the Hayward premiere that took place in Eugene, Oregon, won the event with a top throw of 68.54 meters and to log the 2nd best throw in the conference, 7th best in the NCAA as of April 7th. The Women's Track Athlete of the Week is Rebecca Topham of Wichita State, a 4th place result in the 3,000-meter steeplechase at the Hayward premiere in Eugene. And the Women's Field Athlete of the Week, Samantha Linton of Memphis, had a dominant showing in the discus during the Joey Haynes Invite that took place in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, won with a top throw of 57.20 meters on her 2nd attempt to register the best mark in the conference this season, and 8th in the NCAA as of April 7th. That's a wrap for this week's show. As always, please follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88, and you can follow the Nightline Sports Network at UCF_Nightline. This has been the AAC Report, only on the Nightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening.